Welcome. I'd like to, before I introduce the speaker tonight, I appreciate you coming out tonight. I know we're a small group, but a lot of times small groups can change things for people too. So without going into a great amount of detail, I would like to say that I'd like to thank MEMIC Insurance, which provided the grant money necessary to, in order to hire Andy to come out and talk to us. But the people who applied for the grant, I'd like them to stand up and be recognized. Laura Nesbitt, a counselor here at Central Middle School, and also Julie Barless. Thank you very much, ladies. And thank you, MEMIC Insurance. A little bit about Andy. Andy Tomko is a motivational speaker and a member of both the National Speakers Association and Toastmasters International. He's received their highest recognition, the Distinguished Toastmasters Award. He's recognized as being a passionate and dynamic speaker who speaks from his heart. In his address to the students this morning, he shared much of the same information you'll hear tonight. Andy has not only lived the bullying and bullied experience, he also continues to study and research the problem. As you will learn in his keynote address, Confessions of the Recovering Bully, Andy has led an interesting life. Tonight, he wants to share some ideas with parents and interested public on the issue of bullying, what it is and what we can do about it, and how we can help put a stop to it. There will be a time at the end of the presentation for questions and answers. Please help me in welcoming Andy Tomko, the recovering bully.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you for caring enough to be here. And I certainly want to thank the school, Central Middle School, and the staff for the use of their facilities, and also for caring enough about your kids to invite someone like me in to share some ideas and some strategies with you. As you are aware, I had an assembly this morning with your children, and tonight I'm going to share a lot of the same information with you that I shared with them. And so it's not going to be quite as dramatic, because this morning I got dramatic with the kids, because my message is important, and the way to stress that is to be dramatic, if you will. And you'll hear a lot of that come through tonight, or at least some of it. So already you know a couple of things about me. You know that my name is Andy Tomko, and I'm a member of the National Speakers Association as well as Toastmasters. I am a motivational speaker, and my forte, if you will, my specialty is bullying. So you're looking at me probably just as the students did this morning, and you're wondering, well, what's up with this guy? Is he a minister, or is he the next Johnny Cash? Why is he all dressed in black? You know, I've got black shoes on, black socks, black pants, black shirt. Well, you get the idea. No, the reason I dress all in black is because for a long time in my life, I was a bully. And I hurt a lot of people. I squashed a lot of dreams, and I broke a lot of hearts, and I broke a lot of people physically and emotionally. And anytime I speak about bullying to any group, I dress in black because I'm in mourning for what I've done. And I never want to forget the damage that I've caused. As we go on tonight, you'll hear some stories that I'm going to share with you, and I want to make one thing perfectly clear. I am not proud of what I have done, but I am proud of who I have become. And I've worked very hard to become the recovering bully. When I was a kid, when I was 12 years old, I was 6 feet tall and weighed 200 pounds. I was a big kid. At the age of 13, I started playing organized football. I got into a weightlifting program. My weight went up. My violence went up. My temper would flare like a match at the drop of a hat. I was not a very pleasant person to be around. I told the kids this morning that I was the guy you did your best to avoid. I was the guy that tripped you in the cafeteria and made fun of you. I started rumors about you, and by gosh, you didn't want to run into me in the restroom. I knew all the little dark areas around the school. I was a violent person, physically and verbally. And I didn't put any anybody down. 12 years old, man, I was 6 feet tall. I was taller than all of my classmates and a lot of the staff at school. I didn't have a problem fighting. I certainly didn't avoid it. I think most of them. Like I say, I'm not proud of that. But that's where I came from. And that's what my young life was like. Let me tell you about bullying. Bullying is an international issue. It's not something that's just located here in Michigan, nor the United States, nor even North America. I get emails from as far away as Japan. I get a lot from England and Scotland and Ireland. I get a lot right here from this country. I get them from the Scandinavian countries. People writing me saying, we've got this bullying issue. What can we do? My kids come home and they're crying and their materials are missing. They're being bullied. What can I do? Can you imagine the position these people must be in to turn to a complete stranger for advice? Well, I'm here to tell you that I do my absolute best to answer each and every email that I get. On my website, www.youbigbully, I have a bully survey, which is free to fill out. And that's how I garner a lot of my information. What my information tells me is that kids don't feel safe a lot of the time. Where don't they feel safe? They don't feel safe in the hallways. They don't feel safe outside. They certainly don't feel safe in the restroom. Because, well, maybe you and I know this, but maybe the kids don't. Teachers do not have eyes in the back of their heads. Teachers have their hands filled trying to maintain classrooms, trying to maintain a peaceful and non-violent school. They can't be everywhere. And that is why I really stressed this morning how important it is to get your children involved in reporting. I started off with the Kitty Genovese story when I talked about that. I wonder if you know about Kitty Genovese. A young woman lived in Queens, New York. She was a bartender. So it was a June night. She was coming home from work early in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, pitch black outside. She parked her car alongside the street, started to walk across the street to her apartment building. Suddenly, out of the corner of her eye, she saw something happening in the shadows. She turned and she looked, and this man ran out and jumped on her, knocked her to the ground, began to beat her, pulled out a knife and began to stab her, and Kitty Genovese is screaming for her life. Help me, she pleaded. He's killing me. Somebody, please. Queens, New York. Huge apartment buildings. This man is beating her in the middle of the street. A couple of lights came on. A couple of shades went up. Bad guy ran back into the shadows. Kitty Genovese managed to crawl a little bit. 1 minute. 3 minutes. 5 minutes went by. Nothing happened. The lights went off. And one by one, the shades came back down. The bad guy came back out from the shadows, jumped on Kitty Genovese again, began again to stab her and to beat her. And with her dying breath, she's pleading, please help me. God, he's killing me. Somebody, please help me. I don't know what time it was the next morning, 6 o'clock, maybe even 7. And I certainly don't know who it was. But somebody walking out of their apartment building found the body of Kitty Genovese, beaten and stabbed to death. The police, of course, came and did an investigation. And they found 12 people in that apartment building who witnessed and admitted they had witnessed this incident happening. Nobody did anything. Nobody picked up the phone and called 911. Nobody threw open the window and yelled at you, leave her alone. Nobody did anything. 13 people killed Kitty Genovese that June morning. One man with his fists and a knife, and 12 people by not caring. 12 people who witnessed and yet didn't care enough about another human being to get involved. We need to get involved. We are dependent upon one another. Our welfare depends upon each other. I know what it's like, and I shared this with the kids this morning, because we all have a tendency to group together. I played a lot of sports, so I hung out with all the sports guys, and we did the sports guy walk. And maybe somebody else was a cool kid, and they hung out with the cool kids. And maybe somebody else liked to play games. Maybe they were an Xboxer, or maybe they're just a geek, and they hang out with other people like them. And you know what happens when somebody used to come up to us? Here I am with all my fellow football players. Somebody comes up, well, you don't play football. You're not a sports person. We don't have to care about you. We don't have to give you any respect because you're different. Same mentality applies to the cool kids. Same mentality applies to the geeks and the nerds. You're not like us. We don't have to care about you. We don't have to give you any respect. And it's a psychological phenomenon, but that's how we think. It's called tribal mentality. And what I try to do with the kids is inform them that it's up to them to break through. It's up to them to care about somebody else. Kids hear this. First thought through their mind is, well, he doesn't know about the code of silence. He knows he wants me to be a squealer. He wants me to be a snitch. He wants me to narc on my buddies. No, that's not at all what I want. What I want them to do is to report. And it's very important that they report and not snitch and not narc. You see, when you snitch or you narc, you're telling somebody something in hopes of getting a lighter sentence. It's like the crook who rolls over on his crew, hoping he'll get a lighter sentence, maybe only 5 to 7 instead of 7 to 10 years in prison. When you snitch on somebody or when you narc on somebody, it's telling somebody something just to get someone else in trouble. When you snitch or you narc on someone, it's telling somebody something in hopes of just getting your own way. But when you report, you are telling factual evidence of something that is possibly destructive, disturbing, or dangerous. Destructive, dangerous, or disturbing. It could be something very simple. Your child could be walking down the hallway, and out of the corner of their eye they see some activity, and they stop and they look, and they see some big kid like I used to be hovering over some little kid. I ask them to go and find a teacher, go and find a responsible adult and tell them, report to them what they saw. They're walking down the hallway, and out of the corner of their eye they see some activity, they stop and they look, and they see some stranger going through somebody else's locker. Ordinarily what happens is they turn on their heels and they walk out of there like their shoes are on fire, thinking I didn't see nothing, I don't know nothing, I don't care. What I would like them to do, and what I'm asking you to emphasize with them, is to report the situation. Not narc, but tell somebody about a dangerous or a disturbing or a possibly destructive act. Bullying takes many forms. Primarily, there are two: the physical bullying and the emotional bullying. Physical bullying we're all familiar with. That's the hair pulling and the biting and the hitting and the punching and the shoving. And then there's the emotional bullying, which is just as bad. And that's calling people names and making fun of them and humiliating them. I shared this definition with the kids this morning. There's a man by the name of Dan Olweis, who is Scandinavian, I believe, and he is known as the preeminent researcher into bullying. And he has written several books and several white papers and several essays, and his definition of bullying is about a paragraph long. And I choose not to use that. I choose to simplify that information to this. And you can quote me on this. Andy Tomko, the recovering bully, says this: bullying is any harmful or hurtful activity that continues after the recipient says stop. 12 years old, 6 foot tall, 200 pounds. I was a big kid. And I was a bully. But I was also bullied. You see, what I didn't tell you is that, to be politically correct, I had severe acne. To tell you the way it was, I had a face full of zits. They used to call me pizza face, amongst other things. It's not fun to be called names. Names hurt. They're meant to hurt. They're meant to make you feel badly about yourself so that somebody else can feel good about themselves. Look at the power I've got. I suggested to the kids this little incident. I'm walking down the hall. I hear somebody call out, "Hey, pizza face." I turn, I identify them, and I say, "Stop. I do not deserve to be treated that way, and I will not allow you to treat me that way." And then I turn and I walk away. Very simplistic. And you're probably saying to yourself, well, it's too simplistic. It's just not going to work. We don't know until we try. Reclaiming your power. I try to empower these kids this morning with the knowledge that they have a seed of greatness within them. That they are capable of changing the world. They're also capable of ending bullying. But back to the strategy of stopping bullying. So I tell this person, "Stop. I don't deserve to be treated that way, and I will not allow you to treat me that way." And they do it again. I make a scene. What are you, nuts? What did I just tell you? And I do it in a very loud voice so people will hear me, so I attract attention to myself, especially if it's a dangerous situation. If you're up against some guy like me, and you're only 4'4", and I'm 6 foot tall, and I've got about 120 pounds on you, you're going to want somebody to know what's going on. So you make a ruckus, you make a scene, and walk away. He who fights and walks away lives to fight another day, so the saying goes. And I do not promote violence. Violence only begets violence. I know this for a fact. I lived most of my life as a violent person. Violence solves nothing. I offer the kids 3 strategies. My first strategy is very simple. It's make friends and hang out with them. Because you see, bullies don't like a lot of witnesses. That's why bullying is so clandestine. But if you're hanging out with your friends and you're walking down the hallway or you're walking home or you're outside of the schoolyard and you're with your friends, bullies are less likely to pick on you. And then I suggest that if you can't be with your friends, don't go where the bullies are. Strategy number 2 that I offer them is not to give the bully ammunition, and we do this all the time. We do it as adults, for goodness sakes. I gave the example of my best friend Bob and I are walking down the hallway, and I say to Bob, "Bob, you know, I've been putting on a lot of weight lately, and it's all going right to my butt. Look at the size of my butt. Isn't that about the biggest butt you've ever seen?" And the kids take that in. And I tell them, well, maybe you don't talk about yourself that way. But you shouldn't. You shouldn't talk about your body because your body is constantly changing. The body you have today will not be the body you have in 6 months. Don't give the bully ammunition. Okay, maybe you don't talk about your body. Maybe you do something else, something like I used to do. I was never a great math student, but I loved sports. So I had to have a C average to play sports. So I had this little prayer I used to do. Whenever we had a math test or a math paper was turned back to us, I used to close my eyes and wave my hand over it and say this little prayer, "Please be a B, please be a B, please be a B, please be a B." And oftentimes it wasn't. And I'd slip the paper up and there would be a D or an F. God, just stupid. Don't understand this stuff. I don't get the concept. And then I'd be walking down the hallway and somebody would yell out, "Hey, pizza face, how much is 2 and 2? He doesn't know, he's just stupid. He doesn't get the concept. I give the bully ammunition. We love our kids. I have 5 kids. I have 8 grandchildren. I love them dearly, but no more dearly than you love yours. And we all want the best for our kids. We want them to wear the best clothes, to get the best education, to have the nicest complexion, to have the greatest hair. But it's not economically feasible. And so Maybe a kid will be going to school and he'll be wearing sneakers that aren't quite the in style, and he'll be poked fun at. Maybe he's not dressed in the latest Tommy Pull My Finger sweatshirt or Aristotle. Tommy Pull My Finger, thank you. Somebody got that, thank you. These clothes, in my opinion, are a rip-off because they're made overseas, they're made cheaply, they're made with cheap material, and yet they are as expensive as all get out. But that's the fashion with kids nowadays. We had our own dress code when we were younger, and we all tried to keep up with the Joneses, and sometimes it's not economically feasible, and kids get teased about that. My strategy for that was a bonus strategy for the kids, and it's called Learn to Forgive. Now let me clarify with you, as I did with the children this morning, that forgiving doesn't mean saying, oh, that's okay. Forgiving doesn't mean, oh, that's all right, it didn't hurt anyhow. It did hurt, and it's certainly not all right. What forgiveness means is that you are stopping the cycle. You're not seeking revenge. You're not playing that game anymore. You're not giving away your power. So somebody says to you, well, are those Aristotle? Are those Nikes? You say, well, no, but they look just as good. I can't afford that stuff. And of course they're going to make fun of you. Oh, well, you know, you just come from the wrong side of the tracks, or you're just a poor kid or something. Let it roll off your back as best as you can. Of course it's going to hurt you, but don't seek revenge. I shared with the kids, and I'll share with you tonight, an email that I got from a mother here just right after school started. It was late September, early October. I got an email. Dear Andy, here I am, it's 4 a.m. in the morning, and I'm writing you about my two sons. One came home bloody, the other came home in tears. Why? Because they went to school and they got bullied. I just don't know what to do. When I was in school, I was bullied too. I can still see their faces, and I can hear the names and the intonation in their voices when they called at me. What can I do? And I wrote her back and I said, learn to forgive. Because until you do, that bully owns a piece of your power, just like it owned a piece of this woman's power. When you choose to forgive, you're reclaiming your power. You're not letting anybody else have a hold on you. And I try and stress that to the kids. Another strategy, I don't remember if I offered this morning or not, and this is important for adults, I think. Act confident. Act confident. You know how your kid is. Is he like me? Is he a big, self-confident child, or is she perhaps small for her age, or he perhaps small for his age, and they don't really feel self-confident? A lot of times what will happen, and if you watch, you'll see a kid walking around like this, just kind of wandering around, looking at the ground. I don't know, maybe they're looking for a dime or returnable bottles or something. They don't exude confidence, and boom, that's a target for bullies. Bullies are going to jump right on that. Or the young lady who walks around carrying her books clutched to her chest, all bent over, thinking to herself, please don't look at me, please don't notice me, please don't see me. They don't exude confidence, and that is an instant target for the bully. I suggest to the kids that act confident. If you don't feel confident, fake it until you make it. I was down, I've forgotten where I was, what state I was in. I want to say Tennessee or Canada, but I'm not sure exactly where I was, and I gave the same talk to parents. And afterwards, some parents came up to me and they said, well, you know, Andy, little Johnny used to get bullied on all the time. He was one of those shy kids that you talked about. We got him karate lessons. Hi. Well, Johnny knows karate, so nobody messes with him anymore. And I'm thinking, hey, this is wonderful because Johnny is learning a discipline. Anytime you can have your child learn a discipline where they have to be a certain place at a certain time, where they have to follow certain rules, it's going to enhance their entering into adulthood. It's going to make them a better adult. But it's not knowing karate that saved little Johnny. Little Johnny started feeling better about himself, and instead of walking around like this, just meandering around, not watching where he's going, little Johnny, I'm willing to bet, walks erect. with his head held high and his eyes straight ahead. And he's walking like he's got a place to be and he's in a hurry to get there. He is feeling the confidence. Three groups involved in bullying, in my opinion. They're the victims. We've just talked about them. And the onlookers. And I touched briefly on them when I told you about reporting versus snitching and versus narking. And then there's the bullies. Man, when I was a bully, we were just like other guys, other groups. When I played football, I hung out with the football guys. When it wasn't football season, whatever sport I was involved in, I hung out with those guys. And when it wasn't the sport season that I played, I hung out with Mike and Doyle, my two bully buddies. Doyle is an interesting person. He's one of those people that I don't even know if he ever had a first name. Everybody just knew him as Doyle. You ever know somebody like that? Just known by their last name? Well, there was Doyle and there was Mike. Now, I don't know whatever happened to Doyle, but I know Mike is doing okay. You see, he's not as violent as he used to be. He's not allowed to be. But he's eating 3 meals a day and he's got a roof over his head. Mike still lives in New Jersey, where I was born and raised. But he lives a little further south. He lives in Trenton. That's where the state penitentiary is. And that's where he will be for the remainder of his natural life. Because Mike became a statistic. Studies show, statistics show, that children identified as a bully are 60% more likely to have a criminal record by the age of 24 than any other group. 60% more likely. Bullies are also more likely to drop out of school, as are the victims. What happens when a victim is continually picked on and picked on and picked on and picked on and can't get help, or is too afraid or too embarrassed to ask for help? On my bully survey, the very last question, or one of the last questions, is, what do you think the long-term results of being bullied are? These kids know. They're grade school kids, they're high school kids, they're college students, they're adults. There's the answer. Suicide, low self-esteem, never feeling good about yourself. Bullying has become such a problem that there is a name for people who are bullied that choose to take their own lives. It's called bullycide. Now, you know, when we name a problem after a situation, it's a big problem. Bullied so much they couldn't take the pain any longer. Bullycide. I thought I was really cool. Like I told the kids, when I was a bully, I thought I was all that and a bag of chips. Now, it just doesn't get any better than that. I was surrounded by people I thought were my friends, but they weren't my friends. They just hung around me hoping that I wouldn't bully them, or Doyle wouldn't bully them, or Mike wouldn't bully them. And chances are they were right, but boy, I thought they were my friends. We thought we were tough guys, man. We'd walk around, we had our collars up, we did our little tough guy walk. We didn't take no guff from anyone. At least we pretended. Because you see, inside, I could have cried at the drop of a hat. Inside, I was scared to death. Because my life wasn't good. Let me tell you a little bit about my family. I was born and raised in New Jersey. My dad was a first generation or second generation American. His dad hardly spoke English at all. My dad spoke English, not well. My dad never got beyond a 6th grade education. My dad suffered from a horrible, horrible disease. Very curable disease. My dad was an alcoholic. My dad was a brick mason. He built our house. He poured cement, he built walls, he built homes, he built buildings. He used his hands, he was a very strong man. He was also a physical and verbal abuser. And the more my dad drank, the worse the beatings got. We were told we were bums, no good, never amount to anything. Why don't we just leave while we can? It's the home I grew up in. I learned that conflict resolution meant you calling somebody else a name until they gave in. And if that didn't work, then you resorted to physical violence and you beat them into submission. That's what I learned. That's how I learned to settle conflict. I learned that some people aren't quite as good as other people. They don't deserve the good stuff like we got. I grew up with prejudice. I grew up making sure I got my due. Nobody's going to rip me off. That's the family I grew up in. That was how my environment was. I don't know what your environment is like. I don't know what your family was like when you were growing up. I hope it wasn't like mine. But we all have a tendency to grow into our environment. It's we who teach our children. It took me a long time to become the recovering bully. You see, I was dying on the inside and I didn't want to. And then my mom's dad, my grandfather, came into the picture. And he took me aside. And to be quite frank with you, the things he taught me and told me at that time didn't sink in for years. But my grandfather saved my life with CPR, not cardiopulmonary resuscitation, but compassion, pride, and responsibility. You see, bullies aren't responsible for anything. Anything that happens to a bully is caused by an outside influence. Life happens to them. They're not responsible for anything. For instance, you and I are in class together, and you're smart, and we both heard the teacher say that tomorrow there's going to be a test. And so being smart like you are, you went home and you studied. But I'm not responsible. I went home and boy, somebody called and said, hey, let's go play football. And I went out and played football and I didn't study. Sure enough, the next morning we go to class and there's a test. Well, you got an A because you studied, and I got an F because I chose to play football. But it's not my fault. So you know what's going to happen? I'm going to come after you because you made me look bad. I'm not responsible. And pride? You can be proud of your size. You can be proud of a lot of talents that you possess. You can be proud of your physical prowess, your mental prowess, your ability to communicate. But being proud of hurting some other person? We have a name for people like that. We call them sociopaths. Compassion? I didn't have any compassion. Bullies don't have compassion. Bullies don't think that way. Bullies are out for what they can get. When I was a bully, and it was a hot lunch day, and I didn't have any money for whatever reason, I'd find somebody who had money. I'd take them into my little corner, I'd turn them upside down by their heels, and I'd bounce their head on the floor until all the change and money dropped out of their pocket. I'd scoop it up, and I'd go have a hot lunch, and they wouldn't. And you know what? I didn't care. I didn't care if they got hurt. I don't care if they were crying. I didn't care if their clothes got dirty or ripped or torn. I got what I wanted. And that's the bully mentality. But I maintain bullies are scared individuals, and they don't know where to turn. We have to offer them, we should offer them a place to turn. We need to talk with our children. I know what it's like. I've got children and grandchildren, and when I try and talk to them, hey, how was school today? Okay. What'd you learn? Nothing. I'm not paying taxes anymore then. But that's the way children respond. But you know what? Children listen to you. Children learn from you, and they want you to ask questions. So ask questions. How can you tell if your child is possibly a victim of bullying? Talk to them. Find out who their friends are, and if indeed they do have friends, and what games they play. They come home in tears. They wake up in the morning and say, I've got a stomachache, I can't go to school. If you find out that they're skipping school, or they're very nervous, or they continually take a different way to and a different way home from school, if they come home with ripped clothing or missing materials, chances are somebody's leaning on them. What's the first thing you're going to do as a parent? I know I've done it, I'm guilty of it myself. Okay, what's going on? Nothing. Well, how come you're black and blue, and how come your nose is bloodied? And what happened to the new coat we just bought you that you no longer have in your possession? I don't know. We're going to sit here and we're going to talk until I find an answer. Eventually, something comes up. Billy took it. What do you mean Billy took it? Well, Billy beat me up and took my coat. He makes me do his homework too. Billy's obviously a bully. Boom, first thing I do is shoot out that door and right over to Billy's house, and I confront the parents. Hey, you know what your kid is doing to my kid? That is the wrong thing to do. The correct thing to do is teach your child how to protect themselves. Teach them certain strategies. Tell them to act confident, to make friends, to hang out with them, not to go where the bullies go. And to keep a journal, an accurate journal. Today, November 16th, Billy called me names and chased me home. I ran in the house and locked the door. Nobody was home. Keep an accurate journal, because, heaven forbid, this should ever come into litigation, you're going to need it. Same thing, you can come to school and you can talk to the guidance counselors, you can talk to the teachers, you can talk to the principal, you can talk to the superintendent, and when you come with loaded documentation that is accurate, it helps a lot. If you come in and you talk to Miss Barless and say, well, gee, Miss Barless, Johnny's getting bullied at school. Well, how do you know that? Well, he says so. Well, who's doing it? I don't know. Well, what class is it in? Well, I don't know. The more information you can give the school, the better equipped they will be to handle this situation. How do you know if your kid is a bully? Did my mom and dad know I was a bully? I don't know. Dad being in the condition that he was in, Mom certainly had her hands full, and I was the oldest of 4 boys. So I don't know if they recognized that in me or not. They knew I was violent because I fought a lot and I played a lot of violent sports. So how can you tell if your kid's a bully? Well, he comes home and he's got all these strange and mysterious gifts that people have given him. Perhaps Johnny comes home, look at the new coat I got. Where'd you get that, Billy? Why did he give it to you? Oh, I asked him for it. You can watch your child. You know what? What games do your child play? Do they play Xbox? Are you familiar with WWF on the little video games? What about Grand Auto? These are violent games. For goodness sake, some of these games that our kids play nowadays, the Army used to use to desensitize their soldiers before they went into battle. These things are not like what you and I grew up with. These are extremely violent, extremely graphic, and we're teaching our kids it's okay. Look at the movies we see, and goodness knows I like a good shoot-'em-up movie. But you look at it. Let's take, for instance, oh my gosh, his name escapes me. But let's take, for instance, this good guy who is trapped in a high-rise office building that's being taken over by terrorists. It's all right for him to go out and shoot everybody because he's the good guy. Hooray, hooray, go shoot them up. Get them all. We promote violence. We allow our children to experience violence. We allow our children to think that violence is okay. And then we wonder why they do the things that they do. Moms and dads, it's not an easy job. Goodness knows that. It's a full-time job. We have to communicate with our children. We have to keep on top of things. We have to come to school when it's parent-teacher night. We have to come for anytime there's a problem. Come and talk to the teachers. And my gosh, when you have an opportunity to come to an event like this, please come. Support your school. I heard this evening on the news that they're looking at another budget cut, which is going to affect schools. My gosh, you know, in my opinion, there are 3 people who should be paid the most in the world. And it's not somebody who works at McDonald's. It's a fireman, it's a policeman, and it's a teacher. 2 of them your life depends upon. 1 of them your future depends upon. Your future being your education, your future being your child. This is the world that we're going to live in, the education that your child receives, support your teacher, support your school. My goodness, what a world we live in. I spent a long time of my life as a violent person. Hurt a lot of people. Not proud of it. I used to be part of the problem. Now I do my best to be part of the solution. Our kids need to know that we're there for them, that we're willing to listen to them, that we want to know what's going on in their lives. Prying? Maybe. It might be prying. At least I'm sure they would consider that. But you know what? They're going to go to school and say, Mom and Dad really cared because they were snooping around in my room. Oh, I don't know what they're looking for. There's nothing there, but boy, they care. They may not say that to you. They may never give you an indication of their gratitude. But believe me, they know when we care. 3 groups involved in bullying: the victims, the onlookers, and the bullies. The onlookers constitute 80% of a school. On average, 80% of these kids will see an incident of bullying go on and yet say and do nothing. I told the kids this morning, you have the power. You have the power to change the world. You have the power to stop bullying by not allowing it to go on. If you hear a rumor started, don't repeat it. If you see somebody being called a name or being bullied, step in and intervene. I ask them to become a defender of the undefended. Bullies only exist. I used to exist because you let me. You were afraid of me. And I'm asking these kids to step up and not be afraid, just for a minute. Throw open that window, turn on the lights, and yell, you leave him alone. You leave her alone. I'm asking them to report. I'm asking them to change the face of education by ending bullying. It can be done. The power of one. There was an Asian man, a very elderly Asian man that was lying on his deathbed. And his family gathered around him to hear his final words of wisdom. And he spoke thus: when I was a young man, I set out to change the world. I wanted the world to be a more peaceful, kinder, more loving place. But alas, the world would not listen to me. So I went to my nation, and I told my nation I wished it to be a more peaceful and kind and loving nation. And my nation laughed at me. So I went to my village, and I told my village that I wished them to be more peaceful and kind and loving. And my nation said, you're a fool, go home. And now that I lie on my deathbed, I realize that if I had changed, if I had become more peaceful and loving and caring and gentle, I would have changed my family. And my family would have changed my village. And my village will have changed my nation. And my nation will have changed the world. It is the power of one. Students have that power. You have that power. Great things will happen. Great things have happened when one person stood up and chose to take a chance and be different. And say, stop. That is the message that your children heard this morning. I certainly appreciate you being here, and we have a few minutes. If you have any questions, ask for clarification on anything, I'd be more than happy to spend time, as much time as needed. Yes, sir.
Find themselves in a situation where they can't get help and they can't complain. What do you tell them?
What do you tell a child? What do I suggest a child do when they find themselves in a situation where they can't get help and they can't run away? If it's a physically violent situation, they need to defend themselves, not to be aggressive, but to defend themselves to the point that they can escape or that they can get help. I do not promote violence. I am extremely anti-violent. As I grow older, I've come to the realization of how does that affect me? And if it has no effect on me, the world can go on. But if you're stuck in a situation where you can't get help or you're physically threatened, you need to defend yourself. You need to do what you need to do to be able to escape. That was an excellent question. Thank you for that. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
Two, really. The first one being, do you think that some kids, even at a really young age, are more prone or disposed to being a bully? That's my first question.
Okay.
And the second one is, when you do have a bully, what kinds of things, other than keeping close track on them and knowing what their activities, how do you go about changing that bullying behavior?
First question was, is there such a thing as a young child as a bully? A very young child?
Yeah, more predisposed to being a bully.
I don't know if I would use the word predisposed, but recent studies indicate that bullies have been identified as young as preschool. And it's not the bullying that we're accustomed to, but it's the pushing and it's the taking away of toys and it's the, you can't play with me. I'm not going to be your friend. And children, young children, 2, 3, 4-year-old children do this. And the second question, how do you help your child if you think your child is a bully? You tell them that that type of behavior is not allowed. It will not be accepted. If you get angry and you turn around and you hit somebody, you're going to get grounded until you learn to change your attitude. You need to teach them compassion and responsibility. When I was a bully, you come up to me, well, Andy, how come you hit Johnny? Johnny looked at me, man. I can't have him looking at me like that. And that's how dumb it is, isn't it? That's where it starts. Well, how come you called him a name? He called me one first. You know what happens? You get into a name-calling thing, and then you're going to say something about my mom, and I'm going to say something about your mom, and you're going to say something worse about my mom, and boom, there goes World War IV. We're really going to get into it. Try and let it roll off your back as best you can. And if you suspect your child is a bully, teach them responsibility. Have them get a job. Have them do chores around the house. Make them responsible for doing certain things, and teach them, give them alternatives to being violent, to calling people names, to demeaning people. Teach them love. Love wins. I told the kids this morning, I led a very violent life. And believe me, violence only begets violence. Love wins all the time. Steve, yes, ma'am.
What is, like, the authority that you finance?
Oh, there's a good one. And that happens too, doesn't it? So something's going on at school and you go and you talk to somebody. Oh, really? Well, yeah, okay, Julie, I'll take care of that. That's not a problem. Pardon me? Bingo. And that is a very realistic problem. And you go back to that. You say, Andy, I was in here last week and I told you about a problem. I confided in you in a problem that I'm having with Zane. And you said you take care of it. What have you done? Don't be afraid to question an adult who says, I'll help you, and then doesn't do anything. Confront them. And if you don't get satisfaction there, go to another adult. If you need to, go all the way up to the principal. Keep a journal of what happens. Keep a journal of who you talk to. When you get bullied, write down the date it happened, what happened, who witnessed it. It may come in handy. Yes, ma'am. I didn't mean to direct you. Yes. What made the light bulb go off in my life? An interesting question and a very difficult question to answer because there was no one defining moment. I'd like to tell you that really what did happen to me, and perhaps that was the light bulb. I was married, I began to have children. Our first child was born, and I woke up one morning and I'm standing in the mirror, and I looked at my own eyes. And I thought, my God, I'm turning into my dad. And that's when I began to change. That was the beginning. That's when all of these things that my grandfather taught me came back and roosted. You see, my dad to my knowledge, to my memory, never hugged me, never hugged any of us, never kissed us, never told us he loved us. We questioned him about his, he's not the kind of guy your father is. He shows his love and devotion in other ways. He'll buy you things. Yeah, like shoes and underwear. When I began to have children, I'd have 5 children, I'd have 8 grandchildren. There is not a day that goes by that I don't see them or I don't talk to them on the telephone. There is not a day that goes by that I don't kiss them if we're in person, hug them, kiss them, and tell them I love them, or if we're speaking on the phone. Every conversation ends, I love you. You know how wonderful it is to hear a 30-year-old baby say, love you, Dad? It's wonderful. If I had not broken the mold, I would not be here. I would not have told you to look at this man.
In our neighborhood, we're having a big problem with the bus stop. We have 6 children, 3 of which go to this school, and there's been a problem with bullies in the neighborhood. And my youngest daughter is in 6th grade. She got jumped actually walking home from the bus stop a couple weeks ago, and was so terrible. Terrified that she didn't try to fight back. She was just hysterical. And her brother had walked a different way home, so he didn't see it happen. And her sister that was there with her trying to get in with the kids that were there forming a circle around her, wouldn't let her sister in to help her. And so I started going down and parking around the corner and watching the bus stop myself, because I've been in this school several times and school really hasn't done a whole lot with the situation, and I've had several conversations. Do you think that's going to be more detrimental to the situation, or
For you to sit there and watch?
for them, for me to be, I don't get out and interfere, but I'm just taking notes and watching it and making sure that that's not happening, because they're picking on other kids besides the 3 that I have. There was 4 or 5 that they were really going after, and I'm just making sure that they know that they're not alone, and there's somebody there watching what's going on, so they know they're not getting away with it.
Now, the statement was that you have 3 children and they're getting bullied at the bus stop.
Yeah.
And at one time, your daughter and son were walking different routes home, and your daughter was surrounded
Yeah.
by these kids, and
She actually got beat up.
she got beat up.
Yeah.
2 things I want to say about that. Number 1, I think you're doing the right thing by being there. Anytime an adult is present, the chances of a bullying occurring lessens. The bully sees you there. Just being there helps alleviate that problem greatly. Number 2, in response to your question, if you and I are waiting at the public bus stop, and you turn around and slug me, and I turn around and I slug you back, and obviously I'm bigger and stronger, I will knock you down, would you call the police?
Yeah.
You betcha. An assault is an assault. Ladies and gentlemen, many of us think, oh, that's just kids will be kids, boys will be boys. Oh, little boys push each other around all the time. Girls are friends one day and enemies the next. They'll outgrow it. They don't. If kids outgrew bullying, we wouldn't have road rage. We wouldn't have going postal as an expression to convey violence at work. Kids do not outgrow bullying. Bullying is not a rite of passage. Bullying is wrong. If an adult did to an adult what a child does to a child, and we pass it off, the police would be involved. My suggestion to you is, if it becomes a physical altercation, it is time for police involvement, especially in today's day and age. Are there any other questions? Yes, sir.
What could a teacher have done in middle school or high school? What could a teacher have done or said that would probably affected you early?
What could a teacher in school have done for me?
Said, maybe you were bullied, what would have changed you back to
What would have changed? What would have helped me change? What would have perhaps been an earlier wake-up call is for them, somebody who I cared for, somebody I knew who cared for me, if they had taken me aside and said, Andy, there's a better way. I can tell you're angry. I don't know what you're angry about. But you don't need to live in a life of anger. You don't need this aggressiveness. There is a better way. And if they had showed me that better way, if they taught me to become responsible, taught me compassion, and guided me that way, That may have been an earlier turning point with me. I don't think I shared with you the statistic that, oh, I guess I did. Children who are identified as bullies are 60% more likely to wind up in jail or have a criminal record by the age of 24. That's an astounding statistic when you stop and think of it. You see, I am one of the very, very fortunate ones. I was able to change my life. A lot of kids aren't. A lot of kids don't have somebody that cares about them as I do. It could be a mom and dad, it could be an aunt and uncle, it could be a best friend, it could be a teacher. It could be somebody at staff. Somebody to say, listen, life doesn't have to be this way. Are there any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
How do you help your child without scaring them too much, understand that it must be more stripped down so that kids that are bothering them don't continue to bother them being the target?
That's a very good question. The question is, how do you teach your children without scaring the daylights out of them that at times it's necessary for them to become more aggressive than they normally are? When they are fearful, and it's hard to teach a child to defend themselves when there's no necessity for it. So perhaps a good thing to do might be to practice it. Let's say your son is Jason, and so you would say, Jason, I kind of doubt that this is ever going to happen to you, but I want to give you some help here in case. Oh, let's say that you're out on the playground or you're walking home from school and some big kid comes up and starts to bother you. This is one of the things that you can do. You can make a ruckus, you can scream and jump up and down and attract attention, you can run away. But if you feel that you're threatened, here's some things that you can do. You can teach him to stiff arm in the chest, to keep that kid at bay, and turn and run as quickly as he can and seek safety. It's a scary situation. It's a very scary world that we live in nowadays. The things that our children are experiencing didn't exist when I was a child. And I think that they are aware, a lot more aware of the dangers of today's world than we give them credit for. So I would run scenarios with your child, teaching them, this is what you can say, this is how you can deflect it, you can laugh, you can say, somebody calls you a name, and you stop and say, well, that's your opinion, thanks for sharing, and turn around and walk away. But if it's necessary for them to defend themselves, to become physical about it, you can teach them some manners, such as stiff arming, to keep them at bay, stomping on the instep. There are a lot of things. I don't know if your local police department here offers self-defense classes or not, but there's things that can be done that aren't as drastic, that can be done when it becomes necessary to protect yourself. I hope that answered your question. Are there any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
I heard you touch on something about parents snooping in their children's room and stuff. I've heard so many people say, oh, I would never go into my kid's drawer, I would never look at their diary, I would never look at their notebook. I think that's wrong. I think we have to know what's going on with their kids. And if we give them total privacy, the basis of an awful lot of people use these days, we don't know what's going on in their life.
Precisely. The statement was that, actually you're agreeing with my statement that we need to snoop in our kids' lives. Call it snooping if you want. I call it getting involved. And we've seen ads on television where parents go in and they confront the child. Well, actually they're practicing a confrontation when the door slams. Oh, get out of my life. You're no good, blah, blah, blah. And mom and dad take turns. Okay, we're ready to confront the child. Why? Because they obviously have evidence that the child is doing illegal drugs, probably by going through his drawers, by checking under the mattress. It's necessary for us, especially in this, if your child is non-communicative with you. Yup, no, nothing. Okay. If you can't get any further answers out of them and you believe that there's reason to think that something is going on, by all means, snoop. You all know who Klebold and Harris are? Columbine? You all know Carol Columbine? Suppose one of her dads sued. Suppose one of her dads found the list. Suppose one of her dads found all this ammo stacked up. Suppose one of the dads found the video game. We would not be living in the same world today. It's getting involved in the trials of life. Are there any other questions? I see that our time is up, the allotted time. I thank you very much for being here. I hope that you've gotten something out of this. This is what I told your kids. Please do your best to reinforce it. I know that this school is. Thank you very much for being here.